So today is the next session of the Ask the DNA Scientist Live. And my name is Charan Surdhar and I am a DNA scientist. And the reason we're doing this is because I get a lot of questions as to how do we help ourselves? How do we heal ourselves? What is epigenetics? What does it mean for me? So that's what I wanted to cover today, and the opportunities there for you to reach out and ask questions during the live as well, because I'd love to interact with you if you have any questions. So let's see, just wait for a few minutes, maybe a few seconds. I also have some props today, so just to let you know, I better shut that off. Okay, so I have some props today, and these are some Play-Doh. So I will be playing with my Play-Doh as maybe if I need to answer any questions. So let's begin. And as I said, my name is Charan Surdhar, and I am a DNA scientist. And the way that I got there is that I trained as a geneticist before I worked in the laboratory with DNA for 13 years. And then I left that when I realized the power of epigenetics and how we can shift our DNA. I've been doing this work for about 13 years as well. So the question today is, what is epigenetics and how to light up your DNA? So initially, let's talk about what it means to light up your DNA. Lighting up your DNA for me means that you shift your biology to health and abundance and well-being. And the why I want to bring this in with epigenetics is, firstly, I want to talk about genetics, because if we don't talk about genetics, we won't be able to understand why epigenetics is so important. So genetics is a field that has gone on and been taught in textbooks, and this is what I learned. And many of you have heard of Mendel when you were in your biology class. And you know, what he said was, what we know with genetics is that basically if you have a particular disease in your family, then you know there's a likelihood of you getting it. And so when you have that, as when the scientists put this all together, what was missing is that it's actually resulting in us feeling like victims to our biology. Okay, so if you have somebody in your family that's got diabetes or any health condition, and we even put it down, even anxiety and depression, they can also be something that shows up as part of having been passed down. So, you know, I'm going to go to epigenetics in a minute, but genetics is where it says, if those things are in your family, that's your destiny, and that's the way it's going to be. So let's just all go to sleep there, because to me, that's like, oh my gosh, it's just not empowering. It's depressing for a start. And then it's like, well, what to do for the rest of my life if that's my destiny? You know, have I got any choice? It's none of that. So that's where epigenetics comes in, and that's where I light up personally. And I want to pass on that lighting up to you, because I want you to be able to see that you have this power inside your cells to light up your cells and your DNA. That rhymed. Okay. So how does it go from being the victim to saying, well, that is not true and that I can be empowered? Because there's a big gap. Like, okay, yeah, but I am inheriting the DNA. And so how could that change anything? And how can I change anything? Because it's part of my whole cellular structure. So this is the big information here. And that is that epigenetics means it's what's above your DNA that's interfering with what is going on and how you show up, how your biology shows up, and not the DNA itself. Okay, so those, I'm going to say it again because that's the big, that's huge. If you get that, then you know what epigenetics is. And then I'm going to tell you how we can shift. Once you know that, you have the awareness, then how can you shift your biology? So here we go. So epigenetics, when I said there's lots of information around the DNA that's actually impacting the way that the DNA is showing up. So let's just take my Play-Doh, okay? Make believe my DNA. I got this from the store, and I'm not sure why, but it's cracking a bit. It shouldn't really crack, but never mind. Something I wanted to play with showing one of these on screen like this. Okay, so if you know, we all know that DNA looks like this. It's kind of, well, not exactly like this, but similar to this in that it's twirly and it's a double helix. So, you know, if you have, imagine this is in your cell, okay, and that's your DNA in your cell, and you have got from your mom and dad this DNA. So the old way of genetics is that this DNA is responsible for everything that's showing up in your life. The new way, the epigenetics, is that there's information around the DNA that's actually creating proteins and resulting in the proteins. So how do we connect that to what is going on? Well, firstly, we've got to answer the question, what is, oops, my plate is falling apart. So we have to ask the question, what is it? What is that information around the DNA? That is our beliefs, our perceptions, not only ours, but that of our parents and our ancestors. And that's like an energy form. And this also takes us to another, I guess, another thing that I need to talk about. And that the old way of genetics said that this DNA is solid and it's just the way it is. And, you know, there's nothing else. It's just that, okay? But we know with quantum physics that everything is energy. And when you go down to the atom and down to the neutrons and protons and the electrons, there's just space. And so even though this may seem solid, there's energy everywhere, and we are energy. We're made up of energy. And we know that with Kirlian photography, where, you know, they've taken leaves and they've put them under this special camera, and that camera shows up how they light up. So you can see that. So when we have this other information around the DNA, so the emotions, beliefs, perceptions, I didn't mention emotions before, but it kind of comes in with the perceptions and beliefs that we have. That results in us having particular emotions, okay? So those things are also inherited from our ancestors, and they all surround the DNA. And as a result, what happens, maybe I should get another Play-Doh. Okay. So let's say this represents information of our beliefs or perceptions, and that of our ancestors. Okay, so I don't know, maybe that's our own, and then this is our ancestors. This looks like a right mess, but anyway, you get the point. Okay, so that's our DNA, and this is the energy of our ancestors' perceptions, beliefs, and that's our own. Now, these are around the DNA, and if you can think about it like maybe kind of like this, okay? So they kind of go around. This is not accurate, but this is an example. So they kind of go around the DNA like this, okay? So what happens is that these are, energy too. That's energy too. So these things are going to be influencing the way that the DNA is. So what happens, by that I mean that, you're down regulating health for a start, because what's happening is it's resulting in your nervous system being in the stress phase, more cortisol and all of that. And we know what that can do. There's all the continual exposure to cortisol is where you have the health issues come up, right? Chronic issues. So this is how it is. Then the question is, well, what do we do in order to kind of untangle our DNA from that? Because the DNA, just going back here, the DNA, twirl it back around, the DNA has, if it's free from those, it has the ability to express itself from, let's take the white Play-Doh over here, and just imagine that this is source consciousness, okay? And source consciousness is within us, always within us, okay? But it doesn't look like this. So source consciousness is always inside us. And once we release this is epigenetics, this is influencing our DNA. And so when we release that, we're able to then express the DNA in alignment with source consciousness, okay? What does that mean? That means that you're not creating cortisol. That means that you are upregulating the genes for health and well-being and abundance, all of that. So that's epigenetics. Now, you can see why that lights up my world, because that means that you're not a victim to your DNA. It's actually those beliefs and perceptions that are around your DNA, yours or your ancestors, that are creating the DNA to be kind of locked up, right? And not quite available. It's like the source consciousness in the middle there, the white, is there. It's available. It's always there. But your expression of the DNA is being upregulated or downregulated for stress because of these ancestral or your own. So then the question is, how do we free ourselves from this? And the answer, it may seem quite difficult. And this is where we become empowered. And this is where science merges with spirit. And this is where you become the creator of your life and destiny. Okay? And I get quite passionate about that, because it really is true that we can do this. So how do we do it? If everything is energy, what we focus on expands, right? And remember, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. I'm watching the chat as well, so I'm happy to answer your questions. So if everything is energy, and what we focus on is energy, then that expands. What we focus on expands. So what is it that we're focusing on in our lives, in our day-to-day lives? And that is, we're focusing on the way that things are showing up in the present moment, or things the way that they've shown up in the past. And if you missed my first DNA live, the Ask the DNA Scientist series, which was a couple of weeks ago, it's on YouTube, and on my videos here, it's called Can Trauma Be Passed Down? Or I think it was called, Is Trauma Passed Down? So just go check that out, because I have some more information on how the ancestral, there's some science in there as to why oh, well, I'll mention it here as well. Okay, so when you have, I'll come back to how you're going to release this, but I wanted to talk about this ancestral DNA because it's an important point when I get to the next point. And that is that there was a study done with mice, and what they did was they exposed them to cherry blossom, the smell of it, and they not very nice, but they shocked them with the electricity pulses at the same time as that they were smelling the cherry blossom. And so what happened is that those mice got stressed out every time they smelled the cherry blossom because of the shock. Now, what they did then was they looked at their pups and grandpups, and when they were exposed to the smell of cherry blossom, those mice had the same shock response, even though they hadn't been exposed to the smell, to the electric pulse, or the shock. So that goes to show, again, what I was saying earlier about anxiety and depression, and there's, depression's another thing. I mean, the sense of there can be a chemical imbalance, and also that can be connected to DNA, and that's another story. But coming back to anxiety and any other things that we have, and we just have to look at our lives and the way that we feel. Coming back to this, what we focus on is, if we are in our life experiencing things and they keep reflecting back to us these beliefs and perceptions, whether they're from our ancestors or our own, then it's a continual thing that we keep exposing that, we keep expanding that, in the sense of we keep that in place. And so that keeps influencing the DNA. And then that keeps influencing and upregulating the genes for stress, downregulating the genes for health and well-being. So what do we do if what we focus on happens? So I want to come back to source consciousness, which is always there, the white one. That's the DNA, that's our ancestral and our own beliefs and perceptions. So the white is the source consciousness. That is something that's always there. How do we know that? Well, if you cut yourself, you heal. So we know that there is an organizing element within ourselves that knows what it's doing, and it continues to do and all of that. We know that our heart functions just on its own. We don't have to think about it. There's so many examples like that. So we know that it's there. So how do we get in touch with that? So Alan Watts talks about a story. Well, not a story, but an analogy or a metaphor. And he says that if there's a boat and you are in the speedboat and you're going, and then there's the wake at the back, which has, you can see all the bubbles and the froth. The boat is your life, and the wake is your past. So that is all this stuff. right? Your perceptions, beliefs, and all of that, and your own traumas. And you know, just a side note, your traumas in your life are reflecting what ancestral stuff you have you're holding on to. So, as you can tell, a little complicated, but you know, that's, I guess, who we are. And we are simple too, because this is where I'm getting to. And so you've got the wake, and the wake is the past. It's the stuff that we have had, you know, all of that, like I said. So the wake will never control the boat, right? But the present moment that you're in, the present moment being in the boat of your life, is what controls the boat. So there's there's a lot in that sentence there as to why and how we can release all this. Like I said, this is merging spirit and science, and that's what I love about this. So as we come into the present moment, in every moment, whatever we're experiencing, whether it's a physical thing, emotional thing, something in your life, it's a reflection of these beliefs and perceptions that you have here. Okay? So what do? You get present, because the boat, you being present, this is the past, this is the wake. So you get present to what it is that's going on for you in the moment. You become present. So you connect to source consciousness right here in the middle, the white one. You connect to source consciousness right there. Your energy frequency, like I said, everything's energy. Your energy and frequency match up to that, you becoming present to whatever is showing up in your life. And as you do that, it's magical. It's truly, truly magical. And it may not be apparent to you immediately, but it also can be. And this is how miracles happen. And I truly believe that miracles is a norm for us, but we've come into doubt as to why and how that's not possible for each one of us. So as you become aware of source consciousness by being present in the moment, and quantum physics talks about there is no past and no future, there is just this moment. So the boat is the present moment that you are here in. So as you become aware of the present moment, you're connected to source consciousness, which is the one that heals your wounds, that runs, you know, all the organs in your body. In a second. So as you become aware of that, that energy is so potent. It's so potent that you allow for your DNA, all these beliefs and perceptions that you have from your ancestors and your own, to actually dissolve into pure consciousness. And I don't like to say the word clear, because it's not about clearing, because there's no good and no bad. This just is energy. This integrates into pure consciousness. And if I could change the color of that to white, that's what would happen. So what does that mean? That means that now your DNA is ready to be in a place where it's in pure consciousness. It's you being present. It's you having dropped your cortisol levels. Your DNA is being regulated for health and well-being. That's what that means. And I think this is such a magical point. And this ancestral stuff that you just integrated, you didn't just integrate it for yourself. You just integrated it for yourself. You integrated for yourself and for all your ancestors, your parents, your children. By being in the present moment, you allow for everybody in your lineage to come to this. You see the power of that? Can you feel the power of that? I do. And that's why I am passionate about this. Because you just stepped into another paradigm by being in the present moment. And you allowed yourself to not only shift your biology, but you're helping everyone around you. And then we also have, that's the other spiritual concepts of, this is oneness and we're all one. And that's true, we are. That's why it's so important that if we do this work for ourselves, we're impacting everyone. I've had, clients that have done this and it's shifted them to a place where they're at peace and in a healthy way for themselves, and they begin to notice their family members have shifted because they're doing this. That is the power of this. That is the power of this. You being in the boat, as I said, of that analogy that I used, being in connection with source consciousness in your DNA here. I know it's not the greatest here because it, like I said, it keeps breaking up. But let's just redo that. So if this is source consciousness and that's your DNA, you're in alignment to that. And the other thing I have to say is the reason why your DNA is able to do that, because each gene is able to express itself in thousands of different ways. Thousands. I'm talking more than 10, 20,000 different ways. So you have the possibility of expressing health and well-being when you are in the present moment because your DNA is in alignment with that. Oh, okay, so that was all about what is epigenetics and how to light up your DNA. So that's how you do it. Lighting up your DNA is you being in connection with source consciousness and being present. That's where science and spirit meet the road together, like that, literally. And that's where the power is in you. The power to change your biology, the power to step into and be the powerful being you are and create miracles in your health and in your life. And even abundance can be one of these, which is the inherited perceptions and beliefs that can be around here. So there's so much that we never think about in our lives, that we think, oh my God, is this my fault? This isn't showing up, or this is, I'm trying to really shift this, but it's not shifting. I want you to recognize that that may be a reflection of the ancestral beliefs, perceptions that you have within you, and that the way to shift it is to tune into source consciousness. And as you do that moment to moment, and this is why the practice of meditation is so important. The practice of, it doesn't have to be sitting down. It can be you being in nature. It can be you walking about in nature and yoga and, all of that. And it can be very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. But the reason it gets complicated is because the mind is being influenced by these, and we're having the sensations in our body of that, and then it's showing up, with the thoughts that we have, and then we create that magnetic field of those thoughts, and then the life keeps showing up the way it is. But when we come to the present moment, and I'm sure many of you heard of the Heart Math Institute, which they talk about coming to heart coherence. Well, when you come to the present moment, you are actually connected to source consciousness, as I said, and then you come to the heart space. And from that place is where the magical and miracles happen. Okay, so let me look at some of the questions here. Sue, am I continuing to be affected by my unconscious living family members? Is it possible to be set free from unwanted ancestral patterns despite others who continue to run them? Am I focusing on their behavior? Sue, did what I just said answer your question? Because I believe I've just answered that. Let me know. Till, amazing, hugs from Quito, hugs back, Till. You will not believe how much I needed to be reminded this today, here and now. Blessings your way too, Till. And thank you for being here. Sue, I hope that answered your question. Let me know if it didn't. I will be answering. If you have any questions, please know you can put them here in the comments, even if you listen to the replay. And okay, I got it covered, Sue. Thank you. Great, good. Okay, so the invitation is to be in the present moment, because you have no idea, and none of us do, and we don't need to know, of what implications we're having to the impact of our DNA, and how we show up, our biology, our well-being, all of that. But not only that, but we really, really are impacting everyone in our family, lineage, and everyone around us just by being in the present moment. So this is, like I said, this is where science meets spirit. This is where you are a miracle. I want you to really hear that. You are a miracle. You are continuously a miracle by being in the present moment. And if you can release all this, the ancestral stuff, and integrate it into wholeness, if one of your ancestors had something that they were suffering from, I don't know, famine or drought, it could be anything. They are not alive. Yes, I know, and I didn't cover that. They're not alive, but their energy that they passed on was and is in your children. So you becoming present has an impact on them in that way, in that whole way. And that goes into another story about timelines and all that. But it's that's where we really are a miracle. So thank you for your questions. Thank you for being here. And this is the DNA Scientist signing out. And if you have any questions, I'm looking for questions all the time for you to answer in these sessions, which happen every Tuesday at 3 p.m. UK and 10, I was think 10 Eastern Standard Eastern Time and 7 Pacific. And also, just to let you know that the next genome healing is happening on the 13th of September. And if you're listening to the replay, I've given the link there. Just go and check it out. Just that is a place where I show up with this. And what that does is that when people come to the group, the genome healing, is if that's the DNA and we've got source consciousness, I show up as being the light. And I'm not saying that I'm enlightened, and I'm not saying any of that, because I'm not. But when we come to the present moment, we're all enlightened. Literally, we're enlightened. Okay? So what happens is people come to the genome healing and we have all this stuff. it's a place for you to come back in touch with your source consciousness and allow for this to integrate. So that's what those are about. And I've had people come on there and pain in the hip going away, or, you know, eczema disappearing in a few days after the call. Just so many things. So use this opportunity to join that if your heart calls out to it. And so that's September 13th for the next one. And again, if you're listening to the replay, just go and check the website, see when the next one is, because I'm doing those on a regular basis. Thank you again. And I shall see you again next week, Tuesday, same time. Take care. Bye-bye.